From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
First on the MTN News at 9, dozens of inmates in the Yellowstone County Detention Center have tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. In a news release, Yellowstone County Sheriff Mike Lindner says that an inmate tested positive earlier this week. As a result, the rest of the inmates in that unit, approximately 70 males, were also tested, and about 30 of them are positive. It's not clear how many may have tested positive from a previous exposure. Lindner says the inmates are not symptomatic at this time and are being isolated from the rest of the population. Now, in addition, 4 female inmates who tested positive or displayed symptoms are being held in isolation. Tonight, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy says it's outrageous to accuse him of trying to make it harder to cast in mail-in ballots. DeJoy is also rejecting calls to reverse cuts that even he admits have caused backlogs. CBS Nancy Cordes has more.
It was a slowdown in the mail.
The new Postmaster General insisted today the current delays will not affect mail-in voting.
We will scour every plant the day, each night leading up to Election Day.
So you do support voting by mail?
I do.
DeJoy is a major Trump donor who previously ran a delivery company. He says USPS is just adjusting to the delivery improvements he put in place.
A recovery process in this should have been a few days, and it's mounted to be a few weeks.
But the unexpected changes have alarmed customers and postal workers.
We do not have enough people to carry the mail.
DeJoy has agreed to halt the removal of collection boxes.
I decided to stop it, and we'll pick it up after the election.
But says he won't reinstall hundreds of mail sorting machines that were dismantled or removed.
They're not needed, sir.
So you will not bring back any processors?
They're not needed, sir.
Congress heard a different take from former postal official David Williams yesterday.
You don't save money by breaking down machines and putting them away and storing them. You spend money.
He said he resigned in April because he felt the agency was being politicized, with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin calling the shots.
The transfer of our duties and decision-making authority to him was illegal.
President Trump has railed against mail-in voting and is now vowing to deploy police at the polls.
We're going to have sheriffs and we're going to have law enforcement.
The president doesn't actually have the power to deploy sheriffs, and several states prohibit law enforcement presence at polling sites. The House will be holding a special session on Saturday to pass a bill that would force Postmaster DeJoy to roll back the changes he made this summer. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
But moving forward, Montana and 44 other states will be expected to pay a quarter of the state's National Guard response to the pandemic. Since March, the Montana National Guard has been activated for a federal mission to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. That mission was fully funded by FEMA, but beginning today, the federal government wants a 25% copay. Earlier this week, Governor Bullock called the decision unprecedented.
All the time that they're on federal missions, that's paid 100% by the federal government. They've said that states will end up paying 25% of the cost of the National Guard, and the federal government will be picking up 75%. Unprecedented when it comes to being on Title 32 orders.
Now, the original order from President Trump excluded Texas and Florida from having to pay the 25% copay. Arizona, California, and Connecticut were added to that list a couple of weeks ago. Connecticut only reported one more case than Montana yesterday. There's another surge of COVID-19 cases in Montana as we head into the weekend, with the largest majority of them again coming from right here in Yellowstone County. We told you that 30 inmates have tested positive. Today, there's another 142 new cases across the state. Yellowstone County has 51 of them, bringing our county's overall number of active cases to 677 now. Statewide, our total is more than 6,200, and there was another death reported today in Missoula County. That's the 90th so far in the state. Well, the call to go ahead with sports this fall in Yellowstone County, but without fans in the stands, has brought both cheers and jeers. County Health Officer John Felton will give the public a chance to ask questions about the fan ban in a virtual meeting that will be held on Facebook Monday night. This week, Felton announced the sports policy for high school and middle schools in the county. Athletics will go on for students with precautions and checks in place, but parents and others will not be allowed to see it in person. Felton said in a news release that he wants to be able to address these concerns while helping the public understand the decision-making process and the considerations that went into the plan. The Facebook Live Q&A session will take place from 6:30 until 7:30 Monday night. It will be broadcast live on the Q2 Facebook page where you can give your questions and comments. Felton says that he's looking forward to a respectful discussion and that questions will not be answered past 7:30. Earlier this week, we told you about a petition started by a Laurel woman on change.org asking that the policy be amended to allow limited spectators with proper social distancing. Well, I checked this afternoon. That petition now has more than 20,000 electronic signatures. As Helena Capital and Helena High sports teams continue preparation for the upcoming athletic seasons, both the Bruins and Bengals learned this week they'll start the year with empty bleachers as well. Helena Activities Director tells MTN fans will not be allowed at athletic events in Lewis and Clark County, at least at the beginning of the season. He says the guidelines are clear. It's either no fans but play or no play at all. You might think that school choosing to start the school year with remote learning would reduce the need for short-term substitute teachers. However, in districts still opting for in-person learning, like School District 2, the need for help is in high demand. Here's MTN's Andrea Lutz with a look at how the district is trying to entice substitutes to come on board during the pandemic.
As teachers head back to the classroom this fall and as COVID-19 looms, there's a call to action by districts to get substitutes in line.
Everyone knows that schools for the past 6, 7, 8 years have had difficulties maintaining a substitute pool that's adequate for the need.
A difficulty that Superintendent of School District 2 Greg Upham is taking head on.
We want to put as much support in those classrooms as we possibly can because we know we are going to experience significant learning gaps.
That's of course if teachers experience the virus or are forced to quarantine themselves. So Upham is enticing substitutes with this, a job listing asking for help with an increase in pay. $125 for non-certified substitutes, $150 for those who are certified.
Those are certified staff that we want on hand to do a dual role, which would be to fill in as a substitute when needed, but also available for any staff member that may have to be out for an extended period of time.
But finding substitutes remains a challenge for every school in Montana. At the Lockwood School District, they plan to pay for full-time extra help with the use of CARES Act dollars.
We know that we're going to have teachers get sick, absent of the COVID. We know we're going to have maternity leaves and those type of things. And so the idea is to try and bring those people into the fold since we have those extra resources this year.
And bottom line, districts realize everything is at the mercy of the virus.
If we can keep it contained, and I've said this many times to the public, help us out. Do the face coverings, every one of us.
And Superintendent Upham also says he's checked with their substitute pools, just asked about the likelihood that folks would come back into the classroom. He said there was a low percentage of individuals who said they would not be willing to. For MTN News, I'm Andrea Lutz.
Thanks, Andrea. The Lockwood School Board opted to hire 3 full-time substitute teachers for the upcoming school year. Novasio says they will help quell the need to have others who may teach at multiple schools per week. Students and faculty at MSU Billings say it's been a smooth transition so far after 3 days of in-person classes. And while the goal of returning students to class has been met, there are some changes being made. Interim Chancellor Rolf Grosseth says some professors have changed their schedule to a hybrid platform to limit the number of students in the classroom at one time. Q2 also spoke with one MSUB student and resident assistant who says she's happy to be back on campus.
It definitely helps being able to see someone and the way that they want something reciprocated, especially in touchy subjects with psychology that have to do with mental health if you're learning about that, or criminal justice, stuff like that. So you see more emotion, which is really, I think, something important, especially with majors that communicate with people.
Almer also said that some of the main changes she's noticed in class include more space between students, smaller class sizes, and the transition of class group discussions to an online platform. Republican Greg Gianforte continues to have a huge fundraising lead over Democrat Mike Cooney in Montana's race for governor. But as MTN's Mike Dennison reports, when you take out Gianforte's own substantial personal contribution, it's not quite as lopsided. Here's a closer look at where the money is coming from in the 2020 contest for governor.
Through last weekend, Greg Gianforte had raised $2.8 million from donors for his gubernatorial campaign. And Democrat Mike Cooney, he's taken in about $1.8 million. Both men are getting plenty of money from fellow Montanans. For Gianforte, it's almost 80% of his donations, $2.2 million. And for Cooney, it's around 72%, or $1.3 million. The race also is getting attention from donors across the country, for it's one of the only competitive gubernatorial races in the nation. Cooney has donors from all 50 states, and Gianforte has donors from every state except Hawaii. While Gianforte has been the fundraising leader for most of this race, Cooney actually raised more from donors than did Gianforte in the past 2 months. Cooney raised $726,000 since mid-July, while Gianforte took in about $582,000 from donors during the period. But the biggest difference in this fundraising contest, of course, is Gianforte's personal contributions. In addition to the $2.8 million he's raised from donors, Gianforte has loaned or contributed almost $2.6 million of his own money to his campaign. That pushes his overall total to $5.4 million, or 3 times what Cooney has raised. And Gianforte's campaign has already spent $5 million, including $1.5 million on media buys in the past 2 months. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Libertarian Lyman Bishop of Kalispell is also in the race. He's raised $17,500 for his campaign, including about $10 grand from his own pocket. Ahead on the MTN 9 o'clock news, teeing it up for a good cause. Events surrounding the Billings Clinic Classic have changed a bit this year, but the mission remains just as important. And Bob will fill you in on our weekend forecast when we come back.